Today we're going to be pressure canning some potatoes. So we have our potatoes there, and then we are using this Applemate 3 apple and potato peeler. And then what we do is we take our potato. When this process is done, it goes inside of this bowl of cold water, so the potatoes stay submerged in the water. And then right here, we will take a little paring knife and we will cut out any little brown spots, any skin that was missed, any bad spots whatsoever. We'll cut them all out, put them in this scrap bowl, and then we will cube these up and put them in this pot, again completely covered with water, and then we will begin the actual canning process. So all of our potatoes have already been washed off with cold water, and these potatoes are organic potatoes from Azure Standard. Okay. So while they are peeling potatoes, we have our pressure canner. There's 2 inches of water down here, and this pressure canner is a 16 quart and it holds seven regular mouth quart jars in here. And then we have our jar lifter and just a little bamboo measuring stick that I put together. And you always want to have a kettle or a pot with some hot water and full, because you might need some to add to this or to top off a jar with the potatoes. And then over here we have all of our stuff ready to go, so everything is clean. So once our potatoes are ready to scoop into the jars, I have a slotted spoon so I can get the potatoes out, and then a ladle to cover the potatoes with their own potato juice, and then a funnel. And then we have a magnetic lid lifter like this, and a bowl. So whenever we get started, I will pour some boiled water on here. We have our canning rings. For a quart jar of potatoes, we want 1 teaspoon of salt. It can be canning salt, pickling salt, Redmond real salt. And then we have a bubble popper. So whenever our jars have the potatoes and the juice in there, we just put this in there and pop any bubbles that's in there. And then we also have a clean cloth. We will use this to wipe the mouth off of the jar before putting the lid on, because we want a really tight, good, solid seal, so we don't want any little food particles around the mouth of the jar. Okay, so the reason we want to keep our potatoes submerged in the water is because, they oxidize when they get exposed to the air. So we just want to keep them completely submerged so they're not turning brown. And the reason we want to remove the skin is because there's a bacterial load on the skin. And we also want to remove any bad spots, any discoloration at all. That just shows that the potato, has some bacteria and starting to, spoil and get soft. So we just want to cut away anything that is questionable whatsoever. We want the best quality going into our long-term canned goods. Okay, so the potato scraps here. So like I said, these potatoes have already been washed. Once upon a time, they would take these potato skins and they would make them into a potato soup. They would soften them, cook them for quite a while, season them, and then, make them as smooth and creamy as they could. It was just another way to get your food, your nutrients. And as we all know, there's a lot of nutrients in the skin or even fried potato skins. You could even do that. But yeah, there's a lot of nutrients in the skin of pretty much all vegetables. You can also compost these, of course. Feed them to your chickens if they'll eat them. Or we just take them and just kind of bury them in the garden soil or scatter them around. So when you cut these, you want them to be cubed, and you want them to be about the same size as much as possible. So you just cut them a couple times long ways and just cube them up till they're as uniform as you can. And the reason we can potatoes in cubes and not all mashed potatoes is because when they're completely mashed, they are more dense, and you can't get the center of the mashed potatoes in the jar. You can't be guaranteed that it's going to reach the right temperature for the right amount of time in order to kill any potential bacteria such as botulism. So the reason I put my jars in the pressure canner like this, or a water bath canner, I put them in here to heat up. As you can see, it's boiling. So I let them heat up so they can be sterilized, and so I can make sure my jars are hot and good to go, because you don't want your jars to be cold while you put in hot potatoes. It could crack your jars. And they say you no longer have to sterilize your jars, especially when you're pressure canning, but I still do anyhow. We have our 2 pots of potatoes covered with water, and the heat's turned on right now, and these will need to actually boil for 10 minutes before we start the canning process. You can see the potatoes are starting to boil, so I have set the timer for 10 minutes. So like I said earlier, we are going to be pressure canning these potatoes. Some food crops have to be pressure canned, and others can be water bath canned. Okay, so both pots have already boiled for 10 minutes, but I just wanted to show you that as they boil and are heating up, I just take a spoon and I just gently kind of go from the bottom and bring them up while they're heating. This is because they are getting soft, and then when you actually pressure can them, they're going to be much softer, really, really soft. So this just helps it a little bit from being overly soft. Because the ones on the very bottom that's in the closest contact with the heat are being brought up and mixed. So that's just what I do. All right, it is time to start canning now. Okay, so my husband's gonna can one. All right, babe. Salt first. It's not necessary, I just prefer to put the salt in first. That way if you get too much juice, you know, it may come up to the top and you gotta scoop it out. And so, if you were to put it on top or on last. And we want 1 inch of headspace for the potatoes, which would be right there. And then with the liquid to 1 inch of headspace. Take the funnel off. Okay, you can get a little bit more liquid in there. Oh, looks like we missed a little piece. Not that, babe, it's just the... There. You get that little piece out?
Then I dropped it back in there.
That's good. He's just removing the air bubbles. See, there's one right here, babe. The air bubble right there. There you go. Okay. First. So you want to wipe the mouth off to make sure you're not getting any little food particles on there. That would prevent a solid seal. So the rim is good and clean, and the mouth top is also clean. Just going to do fingertip tight. You don't want to crank down. Let me put it in the canner and do another one. All right, Kristen, you're up. So again, we're just filling it up to 1 inch of headspace. Looks like you need to remove a couple potatoes. I take that spoon there and remove 1 or 2. Just the surface there. There you go. Alright, that's better. And then to remove the air bubbles, we just take the stick and we go down through the center once and then like one on each side. That's good. Then again, just emphasize you need to wipe off the mouth. You don't just go through the motions, you need to actually look at it and make sure that there's no food particles on it. And you just got a lid out of that hot water over there. Put the lid on, and again, fingertip tight. Fingertip tight. I want to check it. Okay, so we have all 7 of our quart jars of potatoes in the canner. Now we're going to put the canner lid on. The canner lid is on, and you can see my canner here has etched out open and closed, and we have the mark right there on the closed, so we've made sure that this is locked. And the petcock screw here and this pressure control weight, so we turn it up and then it will start steaming from these holes, and we want to let a steady stream of the steam come out for 10 minutes, and then we will tighten this down all the way, and then we will let our pressure build up to 10 pounds of pressure. And then once it reaches 10 pounds of pressure, then we will time it for 40 minutes since we're doing quarts. So I don't know if you can actually see it or not, but we now have a steady stream of the steam coming out of some of these holes. So now we're setting the timer for 10 minutes, and we're going to let this steam come out like this for 10 minutes. Okay, so the 10-minute timer went off for the steam to escape here, so now we're going to close this screw. Okay, now we're going to wait for this to build up to 10 pounds of pressure, and once it does, then we will set our timer for 40 minutes. Our 40-minute timer has gone off, so now we will open this, and so now we'll open this and let all the steam go out and let the dial gauge go all the way to 0 before we open the lid. You can see it's almost at 0, but it's not yet, and you can still hear it. So we want to wait until this is quiet and this is completely at 0 before we open the lid. Okay, so this gauge is completely at 0. This is quiet. You can still hear the jars inside the canner boiling a little bit. So it's at 0, it is quiet, so now we're going to take the lid off. Okay, so these have set in here after the pressure going down to 0. These have sat in here for 5 minutes. Now we're going to set the timer for 10 minutes, and after 10 minutes we will take the jars out. You can see they are still bubbling away, and this one here in the center, it lost some liquid, but not too much. It'll be fine, but all the rest look good. Okay, they have been sitting here for 10 minutes, so now we're going to take the jars out and put them on a rack to cool. Okay, so these are now out of the pressure canner. So they will sit here and cool completely, and in about 12 to 24 hours, I will take off all these bands and make sure that they are sealed. Then we will label them and store them. These have sat overnight, so now we just gotta check them, make sure that they are all sealed. None of them are popping up. We will take the bands off, wipe them down, label them, and store them. Okay, so we've taken the bands off of them, wiped them down, I've labeled them, and then like I said earlier, you know, they're all sealed like this, but before I actually put them in storage, I also lift them by just the lid. That's just what I do to make sure that they are really sealed, and then we will store them. Alright, so our potatoes are in storage now, and they are being stored in a cool area, out of direct sunlight. If properly processed, home canned food is stored properly as well. They can last for several years and decades even. Thank you for watching.